Hello and welcome to Out of the Darkroom on Adorama TV. I'm Ruth Medjber and joining me on the show today is photographic artist Jean Curran. We're going to be chatting about her latest project, From Both Sides, in which she uses a rather unusual technique of combining photographic prints and paint.
Adorama TV presents Out of the Darkroom with Ruth Medjber.
Jean, thanks so much for joining me on the show today. It's my pleasure to have you here. Maybe you could tell us a little bit of how you got into photography.
I was quite late getting into photography. I left school, I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I went travelling for maybe 2.5 years and came home. I did a 2-year diploma in advertising and marketing, and then I was like, I don't want to do that. And then my sister actually told me a story about a refugee, and it was from her telling me the story about this man that she'd become friends with who left the Congo, and he was a barrister and how difficult he was finding life in Ireland. And there was something about it, something went off in me, and I was just like, you know, I'm going to do photography, that's what I'm going to do. But I was interested in the image, I was always interested in imagery.
Yeah. So that light that went off for photography, was it more so that you could tell people's stories?
Yeah, there was something very much, or I wanted to know about people's stories. I mean, like, we live in a world where we're kind of like fed mass representations, where you really have to like sift through a lot of it to get down to, okay, well, what's actually really happening? Things are kind of like grouped. And there was something inside me that just felt, go off and explore it and find out for yourself. Find out what the truth is, you know, and there was a lot of that. Just because you see it in the newspaper and you've seen a photograph of it doesn't mean that it's really, really like that. So just go off and find out for yourself, and that's how I used to think about it.
So maybe you could tell me a little bit more about From Both Sides.
From Both Sides is a suite of, in the final edit, of 18 images, and each image is of a different soldier that was present at the ISAF headquarters in Kabul 2 weeks after the war was officially declared over in January of this year. And the soldiers are all taken on black and white film on 6x7.
You went to Afghanistan for how long?
I went to Afghanistan for 3 days on military embed.
So 3 days, and you set up a portrait studio.
Yeah, they had a little studio there, and I was basically just up this flight of stairs in the studio, and they just kind of left me there, so I'd run back down. And you know, there's a lot of military there, and it's a busy place, and so I would run down onto kind of like what was the street, and I'd just be like, hey, you, come and have your photo taken.
Grabbing soldiers off the streets.
Grabbing soldiers off the streets. Yeah, and I flew from Afghanistan to Dubai, where I was using a darkroom, but I knew, I had a feeling that some of the film may have been damaged coming into Kabul. There's a really old X-ray machine there that everybody talks about, and it's used for explosive devices, and everything has to go through it, and some of the film did get a bit foggy, and some of it just destroyed going through that. So when I got into the dark room in Dubai, I had to work very hard to make clear prints from kind of foggy negatives, and got a series of prints together, and to fly back to Afghanistan. When I first had this idea in 2011, I began researching hand-painted portraits in Afghanistan, and there was a particular portrait of this man that stood out to me. And the person who had taken that portrait, I believed, really understood photography and really understood art. And there was something about this portrait that stood out to me above all other portraits. And so I had a name of a studio, Taken Studios. I decided that I was going to go to Mazar-i-Sharif in the north of Afghanistan and try and find the person that painted that and get him to paint the portraits instead.
So you found your painter, did you?
Yeah, by absolute chance.
Okay.
Yeah, and it turned out that the artist that we went to meet, it wasn't him, and then he sent us to somebody else, and that wasn't him, and then he to somebody else. And then the driver looked over my shoulder, and I had saved that portrait on my phone, and I had carried that portrait with me for the last 4 or 5 years on my phone, and I was showing it to people going, you know, painted portraits, like photographs, and he looked over my shoulder and he was like, is that a photograph? And I said, yes, and he went, I know somebody, come on. So we got in the car and we drove along, and we saw this man sitting on the side of the road outside this tiny little camera shop, really old camera shop. And I knew when I saw him, I went, oh, there's something like really nice about his face. And then I started to get really nervous, and he sat into the car, and Rahul, the fixer, started to explain to him about what was happening, and he was like, yes, I can do that, yes, no problem. And I was kind of going, oh, does he understand what we're talking about? And so I took out the phone and I went, like, you know, pictures like this, and he's like, take it to his desk going, they're my pictures.
Oh, you found them.
Yes, it was amazing.
It sounds really amazing. Just completely just stumbled upon him.
Yeah, but also when I met Kareem and he agreed to do this, he was like, okay, I'm going to go home and I'm going to get my paints and I'll come and I'll meet you at your hotel and can we work there? And I was like, yeah, we'll get somewhere to work there. And so he went home and he brought back his paints and he opens this really old box and he starts taking everything out, and Kareem starts explaining that he hasn't used these paints in over 30 years and he's wondering, you know, can he still use them? And he had a small painted glass and he started mixing them and he was like, oh yes, it's going to be fine. And straight away he was like looking at the prints and was going, okay, I'm going to start with this one.
So basically your work it's a collaboration. This body of work from both sides is a proper collaboration between you and this Afghani artist.
Yeah, and I said it to him, I was there going, you know, I really just feel like I'm kind of a facilitator. I feel like I kind of went on this journey where my job was almost to just like hand you prints so that you can paint them and then I'll just take them away and this is it. And you know, it turned out the guy in the photograph was his brother. This photograph that I kind of followed up to meet Kareem was also a great artist and photographer who had been killed by the Mujahideen, you know, 35 years beforehand. And and so we kind of had this conversation. He was going, you know, talking about how his brother would have, you know, this experience of having somebody come in when there'd be no art, and to finally get to, like, you know, take out your paints again and paint and talk about art and to experience it, and that how powerful art is.
My God, you must have given him so much that day. It must have just been so emotional.
He gave me so much. I was like, wow. Yeah, he gave me so much.
You have this beautiful collection of work. What do you hope to do with it now?
Oh, I really hope that now it'll be taken into a museum, into a permanent collection, because while it is recognising the history of art and artists in Afghanistan, it is also quietly a quite political piece that talks about photojournalism and photography, the unequal exchange within photography, and it also talks about the narrowing vision of conflict and about how it's a really controlled narrative now. You know, when the system of embedding was first created, the military said, you know, part of winning a war is also information warfare, and this helps us control that. And so, without it being overtly very political, it is political.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cross-culture reference there. I mean, you're Irish, you're a photojournalist, you travel in the world, you meet Kareem, who has so much cultural background from Afghanistan that we don't normally hear of. But then you've also got the soldiers.
Yeah.
I mean, what nationality were they?
There are many places. There's American, there's German, there's Macedonian, Romanian, French, Italian.
Wow, this is global kind of collaboration going on in one piece.
Australians, yeah.
But I'm glad you have such passion for it and such a desire to expose these cultures that would never normally be there. I'm really glad to chat to you today, and I can't wait to see more of what you do. Thanks a million. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Well, that's it for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you feel like starting the conversation, just leave me a comment below. I do appreciate the feedback. A big thank you to the Gallery of Photography for helping out with this show. If you want to learn more about photographic skills, visit the Adorama Learning Centre. You're going to find some tips, tricks, workshops from all sorts of professional photographers. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Adorama YouTube channel, because I'm going to be bringing you back some more videos. Thanks, and I'll see you again soon.
Do you want great looking prints at low cost? Be sure to visit our easy to use online printing service. Adorama Pix has professionals who treat your images with the utmost care that you can count on. For a quick turnaround on photos, cards, or albums, use AdoramaPix.com.